Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Movie Battleground. I am JTH, the host that Jimmy Kimmel wishes that he could be. Said no one ever. So, with that being said, let's get further into the first round of the Movie Battleground tournament. We have a very highly anticipated matchup between Chris Skywalker Dohmen and Zack the Great Gonzo Don't Call Me Chevrolet Ford. So, without further ado, let's meet the players. First off, let's meet Mr. Great Gonzo himself. Zack, first off, good to meet you. First time I've ever met you on here. And I guess the main question would be, despite coming into this match as the more experienced player and technically the higher ranked player, there's quite a bit of people that are kind of touting you as an underdog in this match. Does that bug you in any way?
I mean, no. I feel like the underdog to myself. I don't think I've ever predicted myself to win. I just like to keep life interesting, and I can surprise myself every now and then. But I mean, Chris got lucky with a low ranking by only having few matches, so in that way, I kind of got screwed. But it's much better to win a match that you feel like you have no chance of winning than lose a match you think you had in your pocket. So this is a good way to go in, and I can make my mom, who also probably thinks I'm going to lose, I can make her proud as well.
Well, okay. We both know what that's like then.
That's it.
Us lovable losers. We all got to stick together. And your opponent today is very much looking forward to handing you another unfortunate L. You know him from Take 3. You know him from this very channel, Worldwide Movie Games Network. It is the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only Chris Skywalker Dohmen. Chris, you're coming into this, I believe, having only played in a 5-way Star Wars match. I think this is the first time you're going to be competing in the standard format. Does that kind of excite you, knowing that you're going to be playing this new format, or does it make you a little more nervous, knowing that the stakes are very high, knowing that you're coming into something completely new and it could be one and done?
Absolutely. I'm very happy to finally get my feet wet in the regular league, in the regular format of this. And you know, I'm gonna say it right now. This is gonna be a very interesting first time experience, just because yes, I did compete previously in just Star Wars, but I think like a lot of people who have also competed in trivia and debate stuff about Star Wars, who want to do other stuff, I'm here to prove that yeah, I also know plenty in other categories outside of just Star Wars.
Good to know. And first off, Chris, I'd like to apologize. I don't have a bracket to ruin in your presence. I feel like that would want to be hosting, so that was all screwed up. I know. Oh well, we can try. So without further ado, let's get into the rules of the game. There will be four main round questions. Each of you know the answers that each of you have given. At any time before either answer has been given, each of you has the opportunity to have one round extension where you can extend a round from 5 minutes to 6 minutes if you so wish, but you only get once to use it wisely. If there is a knockout when somebody has a score of 4-0 after the 4 main round questions are done, that would be considered a knockout victory. If that is not the case, we will have speed round questions until somebody gets to 4 points. So if both players are ready, I think we can get this started.
That was my ready. I just coughed instead of saying, yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, okay,
I
sure.
So.
Let's go.
Alrighty, so let's kick this off. The first round question, I think this question's been asked before. This might just be my imagination, but there's been a couple more MCU movies that have come out since then. So we want to beg the question again. What is the best MCU post-credit scene? $5 that the Captain America Homecoming scene will not be mentioned in this conversation, but you know, that's just a guess on my part. So without further ado, Zack, you are the higher ranked player. You will get first crack at it. What is the best MCU post-credit scene?
So the kind of the original purpose of the post-credit scenes for the MCU is to build excitement for what's to come, for what's going to be bigger in the universe. It's kind of transitioned to provide a little bit of a comedic element, like Spider-Man. Thanks for the $5, Jeremy. It's mine now. But the scene that really kind of set the precedent for what these were to become was in Iron Man 1. After the credits roll, no one's really expecting a post-credit scene at this point because this is the first of the MCU movies. Robert Downey as Tony Stark enters, you hear the familiar voice from the movie of Jarvis coming in, so all the familiar elements, but with one unfamiliar character with their back turned, and then you hear the cool voice starting to talk to Tony Stark, and you kind of understand who it was, but not really why they're there. And as he turns around and walks up, you see it's the badassiest of all the badass men, Samuel L. Jackson, with a fucking eye patch, looking cool as hell, as Nick Fury, and saying, we're interested in you as part of our new program, the Avengers Initiative. This scene set the whole universe for what was going to come. Okay, we fans going in thought this is an Iron Man movie. We're going to go. We didn't fully understand the MCU and its grand ambition at that point, and this was pretty much the news announcement announcing it to us that this is going to get so much bigger than we can expect and grander, and it was all going to connect and made fanboys' dreams come true, but also for the everyday fan that might not understand every Easter egg thrown in, like who Nick Fury is or who S.H.I.E.L.D. is, but they do have that familiar name Avengers in their head and go, yeah, I understand what it is. It's a bunch of cool people kicking ass together and all these great superheroes that I'm going to be able to see it. So for the main point of these scenes to build that excitement, no scene has ever built the excitement and kind of the grand plan as this original Iron Man post-credit scene was able to do.
All right, very strong opening statement by the great Gonzo. Let's see what Mr. Skywalker Dohmen will have to counter that.
Okay, so yes, the Iron Man opening, the Iron Man post-credit sequence is somewhat iconic because of, you know, the whole, let's start the Avengers Initiative, you know, all that fun stuff. But to me, the idea of a post-credit scene is supposed to expand the universe, introduce a new concept that can be explored later on in a future film or in the upcoming film, as we've seen from post-credit scene of each film. And that's why I'm going with the Captain America, the Winter Soldier post-credit scene, specifically the one where we are introduced to the characters of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. So you have, so you have these Hydra agents that are, you know, obviously doing something very diabolical with Loki's staff, who don't know what it is they're doing. So we're getting all this intrigue, and we're seeing what their grand master plan is of how, even though they just got defeated by Captain America, they're still going to try to take over the world. They're still going to try to implement their software to whatever else they're going to do across the world. And then we are shown two new characters that we've never seen before, but they are displaying abilities that in the realm of this exact universe, the MCU, I'm talking. Because yes, in Marvel films, we've seen mutants before, but not in the MCU. We haven't seen people with these kind of powers before. So this is really eye-opening. It's really game-changing for what is going to come in the future.
All right. Two very strong picks from both players. And for the record, Zach, we didn't shake on it, so I can't give you $5. That breaks your heart. So 5-minute debate period will begin when one of you starts speaking.
Okay, so Chris agreed with me that the point of the whole extra credit scene was to expand the universe, and then taking credit as his was the one to expand the universe, when that's 100% the purpose of that scene is not just to expand the universe, but it made the universe. It said there is going to be a universe. This was just another kind of, this is what's next. Here's two more characters after we've already introduced 15 characters, and so it's just adding to the pile. Maybe they have powers we haven't seen, but it's not that much different than the super natural elements of seeing a god with Thor or a person turn into a hawk. It's just, and as you saw, we saw it in X-Men, so it wasn't anything really we were not used to seeing on screen, maybe in the MCU, but not seen on screen. When And they're also characters, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, that anyone outside of the comic book world aren't that familiar with and don't mean much to anybody. When the Avengers, they said as a name, people can connect that to maybe not the specific names for the everyday fan, but they know it as a team. They're like the Marvel Justice League. Many common viewers can make that attachment and probably do know Captain America is part of that, if not Thor and Hawk as well. So having these less familiar characters is just not exciting for someone who's not deep into the comic books, especially characters who are, you see actors that you're unfamiliar with too, compared to Samuel L. Jackson, who's just cool as shit, and everyone loves him. So it gets you further, like they're going to get all these great people like Samuel L. Jackson being further scenes, and then you get the Captain America, you know, all these people like Aaron and Elizabeth Olsen, who's great, but not in these movies because she's
all right. I'm going to stop you right there because okay, so exactly what you were saying. Difference is, sure, if you know the comics, then you know what that post-credit scene leads to. But at the time, all it was a post-credit scene. There was a post-credit scene in the end of Flash Gordon, which was going to set up this big sequel and this big story, but nothing came of it. So here, let me just take it down a little hypothetical. Iron Man 1 doesn't work. That post-credit scene is completely useless. The post-credit scene of Captain America and Winter Soldier is coming after this franchise has been long established, and then we are given something that we have not seen in this universe before, which is truly supernatural powers, because everybody else's powers is granted them from either because they're from another planet or because of some sort of man-made artificial hindrance. Like, for example, Iron Man, he made his suit. Bruce Banner, it's a result of chemicals that man screwed with. Hawkeye, he's just a great archer. Black Widow, she's just a great assassin. You have Captain America,
Thor?
Again, he's from another planet. The rules are different. The rules are different. But when you have characters like Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, who are completely brand new to this universe, and their abilities have never been seen before in this particular universe. Yes, we've seen,
and not even properly explained because they can't really get into mutant discussion. They shouldn't have even been used because they had to share them with another universe.
From a certain point of view, but because of where they were able to take these characters moving on, that is where the interesting part comes from. And it's the fact that it leaves you on the question of, oh shit, what does this mean? Because it would also lead to, on an external point of view, it would lead to us getting more characters outside of the traditional characters we've seen so far in the MCU. It's what led to us getting Iron Man or Spider-Man, Eagle the Living Planet, potentially the X-Men if this whole Disney Fox deal actually goes through.
I mean, I think we already knew this because we've already had the Guardians of the Galaxy trailers out by that point. So we already knew that it was going to be able to expand past it. This was just bringing more of the supernatural to Earth. But once again, with the first Iron Man scene, we had no idea what was to come. This was just to say that was not wise to put an extra credit scene at the end. What you're actually saying is risky. It was risky. They don't know what they're going to have. And I'm sure if they didn't think the movie was going to work, they probably wouldn't put that scene in there. If it was like they had the Mummy on their hands, they're like, yeah, this isn't going to be a universe. We're not going to throw an extra credit scene out there. But they had confidence in it. And I think that was able to add to people's feeling with Iron Man because they could see as a bigger picture. So they came out even more excited than they might have been just from watching the movie.
Okay. Well, obviously, we're of two different minds on this sort of thing. Where, yes, your idea comes from the place of this is the groundwork. Mine is the supporting layers that will only grow and further expand this to even more places than we could possibly imagine. It can open up to brand new ideas because, hell, again, by this time, we still hadn't had Ant-Man, so we weren't into that level of crazy scientific weirdness. We weren't at Doctor Strange, so we weren't in the mysticism and the Force-like abilities of what we had seen in that film. We weren't into these oddities that would become the norm. This was the beginning of the support structure to the MCU.
All right, that's time. The 5 minutes is up. We're going to allow each of you to have one more closing argument. So Whenever you're ready, Zach, take it away.
Okay, so my scene, first of all, has better actors with Samuel Jackson, Robert Downey Jr. than either of those are. It has more important characters to the universe and more engaging characters to us, because Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver kind of died on landing with Age of Ultron, because also the following movies didn't make the use of them. It's a more purposeful scene. The Civil War scene, or not Civil War, sorry, Winter Soldier scene, it kind of has multiple things going on with the staff and with these characters, and I don't feel like it's ever fully addressed. It becomes a major story point with Hydra's interactions with them, when this was carried on to what was going to guide not just Iron Man 2 when he's really starting to work with S.H.I.E.L.D., but the whole Avengers thing and everything for it. So it had more of a point into the universe, and more point to the story in general, because it was Tony Stark's next movement when Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver really had nothing to do with Winter Soldier at all. And the movie, tone-wise, is completely different than the actual credit scene, because the stakes are more in real life and then gets magical at the end. So it's just really jumbled as that. Why this bonus is more cohesive with the Iron Man picture that we've seen, and gave us kind of a tighter view of what this universe was going for. And the eye patch. Nothing's greater than that. I'm done.
All right, Chris, take it away.
The eye patch is great, but
Thank you.
The Iron Man post-credit scene is simply them taking a gamble on the idea of building a franchise. Captain America: The Winter Soldier that post-credit scene successfully set up the events that would take place in the next Avengers film. Because let's never forget, this movie was the last film come out before Avengers 2, and you had to give us a proper setup, and you had to introduce some new characters that were going to blow us away. And while you could argue that the first scene in Age of Ultron is not as epic as people might have been hoping, the character of Scarlet Witch has endured, has endeared, and is a very popular favorite among a lot of MCU fans. And Quicksilver's death is incredible. And the fact that this movie actually had the balls to just show us who they are without a single line of dialogue, without a single bit beyond just showing us their powers and how they work with them. That is an impressive feat of filmmaking and a proper tease for what was going to come in the future. Thank you.
All right. Very good opening round by both of you. Both of you made a lot of great points about your respective scene. Both of you did a great job of knocking down the other side as well. I think ultimately where it came down to, I'm ultimately going to give the point to Zach here, ultimately because he did bring up the fact that, yes, while Dohmen did bring up the fact that the scene is risky if the movie doesn't work, he does bring up the fact that that scene does ultimately set up everything that comes and is still setting up things to come to this day. Obviously, with Avengers Infinity War, like literally every single Avengers movie is set up by that very scene that, while it may not have worked, it absolutely worked. So with that, I'm going to have to give the first point to Zach here, but that was a really good opening round by both of you. So with that being said, Zach jumps out to an early 1-0 lead, but Dohmen can quickly come back with round two. This is an interesting one because obviously there's been a lot of great comedies out there that have gotten sequels, and there's also been some not so good comedies that have gotten singles. So with that being said, we want to ask both of you guys, which comedy most deserves a sequel? Not best. What comedy most deserves a sequel? Dohmen, you went second in round one, so we're going to kick it off with you in round two. Take it away.
All right. So the premise to 1984's This Is Spinal Tap is very simple. Rob Reiner follows the British heavy metal band Spinal Tap on one of their tours, and hijinks, hilarity, and quotableness ensues. These go to 11. Now, I'm not pitching a direct sequel in terms of, following Rob Reiner or following Spinal Tap. Because sometimes the best sequels are spiritual successors but still are part of the same franchise. For example, 10 Cloverfield Lane to Cloverfield. Technically, it's a sequel as it takes place in the same universe. So I'm proposing the year is 1993. F. Gary Gray is a young up-and-coming director who is also a great writer, and he starts following this little band called NWA, which eventually some of the hijinks and some of the craziness that ensues from his experience going on tour with this infamous hip-hop act becomes the inspiration for his film from 1995, Friday. So it's a double whammy. It's one part mockumentary, but one part mock behind the scenes.
That's a very interesting take, very interesting pitch. Dohmen has laid out the groundwork. Let's see if Mr. Great Gonzo can find anything to counter that whatsoever.
Okay, so I don't want to argue technicalities too much, but my movie is more of a direct sequel as we are going for, and my movie is going to be Coming to America 2. Now, people have been, or Hollywood has tried to bring Eddie Murphy back into our culture and back into really with the Hollywood elite, but just with fail. Okay, then they talked about making a Beverly Hills Cop 2, and that never really panned out. But I think Coming to America is the perfect platform for him because he doesn't need to be the lead. He is now in the father role. You can have him and James Earl Jones, who's still around, as a great comeback for both of them because James Earl Jones is so great comedically and just isn't given this options. I would love to see him on screen. I still think he would work today. And also come back for Arsenio Hall. Why not? I feel like there's room for him, and we are in a culture that loves the story of a great comeback, whichever way possible. And then you can have a younger star to really connect this to today's time, and up and coming, kind of a passing of the torch in a way of the generations of Black. I would put it to Gerald Carmichael from the Carmichael Show, who's also in Neighbors and some other movies as well, who's really ready to make his breakout. And what I think about interesting with him, and I also think Dave Chappelle somewhere in there, because he also just played multiple on Eddie Murphy. Another, even though he is an older man, he's still a connection, I think, to the popular culture that Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall has definitely kind of aged past. But having those people in there also creates kind of a political element that's going to make this kind of comedy more relevant to us. Because I think to twist the story around, they could be going to, instead of going to New York, going to Queens, with today's culture and their political culture, the guy would be like, I want to see real America, or like middle America. So you see them, and I don't want to call it like Trump country, but Trump country, see them in middle America and handling that with more of a political touch. And you can have, if you put a smart writer and director around this, and we're not talking the feasibility of things and the possibility, because I don't think the person I would ideally want would ever do it, because it's just not kind of in his train of thought right now, is Jordan Peele would be perfect for this. Doing some of the broad comedy and the multiple character roles with Eddie Murphy and Dave Chappelle and Arsenio Hall, and I think Gerald Carmichael could pull that off as well, but also adding that sense of political commentary and thoughtfulness to make the movie resonate a little more rather than falling flat, which is what I think they try to do with these H comedians. They put them in orbit when there's no bigger point and it just falls flat. It just seems like a retry. This is taking some of his popular material but bringing it forward and adding more context to it and content to it. So I think Coming to America 2 is a perfect platform for these stars, and it's an idea that was great at the time and can be great at the time now, definitely moving forward. And I think it's a movie that it's a little bit stuck in the 80s, so it needs to be moved forward a little bit to keep that franchise, or keep the story in the movie relevant to younger generations.
For clarification, before we go into open debate, you're proposing your film comes out like this year?
If it gets, well, are we putting like I said we're not really thinking feasible, but yeah, this year or next year, like within, if you're gonna have something.
I'm genuinely pitching my film for a 1993 release. That's when it would come out.
Oh, for 1990,
no for my film. So when would yours be coming out?
I think that works. I interpreted the question as today, so I'm gonna say today because that's what I based my whole thing around. So okay. Yeah, this year. I might have done it differently if. Yeah, it's okay. I'm happy with it.
Okay. Well, for the record, the question is what comedy most deserves a sequel. So there is no interpretation of what year it would actually be. So the clarification is fair. Very interesting. You both kind of have two similar takes, but you have kind of two different twists on how it would be done. So I'm pretty interested to see how this is going to go. Y'all have 5 minutes. Take it away whenever you're ready.
Okay, first things first. Eddie Murphy sequels have never worked out. Shrek 2 is an anomaly of luck because you have Beverly Hills Cop 2 and 3, which are terrible. Another 48 Hours, terrible. Dr. Dolittle 2, terrible. You have oh Jesus, the Night Professor 2, Meet the Clumps, terrible. Problem is Eddie Murphy's always a great first timer. He's never great in the sequel because the directors always have him do exactly what he did in the first film. Ergo, I'm sorry, but because you're going to be having him play Prince Hakeem as the character who was already fully developed, who was given one of the most perfect arcs in a comedic or dramatic or romantic film, you can't improve him. You can't make him better. You can't give him a new arc to go through. Same thing with James Earl Jones or any of the returning cast from the first Coming to America. You can't fix that. Like, so move on it.
You can definitely give new arcs because they're in different stages of their life. He's now in the father role in the James Earl Jones role. And we'll see, did he become him, or is he still able to have his kind of more progressive ideals and royalty and give that off to his son? And saying that Eddie Murphy's sequels are bad, that's because he was still given creative control in that time and he had nowhere to go. I'm giving complete creative control for this to different people. He is playing pretty much the Stallone role in Creed. He is there to be that character and to act and give a performance, and all his time will be given to that. Why there's so many other people that can help really make these things work with new creative minds, and new creative minds that probably grew up making this movie, being part of why many comedians wanted to become a comic actor. So I feel like to have their voice in this and be able to move it forward, I think they would have lots of great ideas to really make it work. When with your This Is Spinal Tap thing, it doesn't even have enough connection to me to make it a spiritual connection. If you say that, then Pop Star, in a sense, is a spiritual sequel to Spinal Tap. It doesn't need to be connected to Spinal Tap to have a parody movie about any kind of music groups. It's a genre more than a franchise. And having to do with a real band.
That was the point of Spinal Tap. It was a satire of early 80s British heavy metal. So go to 1993. What's coming out? NWA, Public Enemy. You're starting to see the very early rise of Tupac and Biggie Smalls. You are getting what was called by obviously the white folks dangerous hip hop. So
it's just another movie similar in the genre. You're saying like Spy Hard and Naked Gunner's spiritual sequels. They're not. They're just similar things.
But okay. Yeah,
Popstar is not a sequel to them. Popstar is completely inspired by Spinal Tap and doesn't need to be it. It's a parody of where our music was now, where pop music was now. So it's something that is done. But I also feel like rap is not the genre to handle that. Pop, it has a goofiness to it. Hard rock has a self-seriousness that they feel like they're artists, but they're long hairs and doing ridiculous things in the background. When rap has seriousness with a point, and it's just, especially at that point with NWA, I don't think that's something laughable.
But the culture, that rap was trying to support, and this was the time when rap was going away from what it was actually trying to be serious about, and was starting to become these brag tracks. And this could be sort of showing us what actually caused some of this stuff behind the scenes. It could be enlightening, but also very funny, because guess what? When you're on the road and when you're doing like all these crazy stories and you're seeing like gang fights and you're seeing a bunch of crazy shit going on, of course you can have fun with it. And that's exactly what the first Spinal Tap did. I'm sorry, I don't see the comic possibilities of doing a Come to America sequel done today, just simply because of the fact that, oh, Eddie Murphy, we didn't want to get him relevant again. The last film he got any recognition for was Mr. Church, and that was a drama.
The whole point Coming to America was to fish out of having someone from Africa being stuck in Queens with that crowd. So the comedic purposes of now is taking someone from royalty in Africa and putting them about a bunch of closed-minded white people, which is kind of taking that Borat. You think it sounds like something. Don't want to. Oh, but this is what Borat did too. It can make Coming to America more politically relevant, more risky in a way, and more striking. It will eventually could become a more important kind of comedy. Which is I feel like what we're looking for today with things like Get Out.
Okay, I feel like that though that kind of destroys the point of the original though.
It doesn't. It just builds off of it. It's just creating different. At least mine has something to share with the original. Still have the broadness and the accessibility to the mainstream, but still being a little challenging with what it's trying to say. And that's why I say gain some of these specific comedic minds to kind of put those thoughts like Jordan Peele and Jared Carmichael, who are really thoughtful, intelligent people, to add this commentary into that. But still, they are. Carmichael is a hugely popular show that touches on very politically relevant topics, and he's still able to be accessible and people still are able to watch him. And I think that's something that we don't have enough of today, when music parody is something that's been around and it's not going to be like any different than Pop Star or something else.
All right, that's time. The 5 minutes is up. Chris, whenever you're ready, go ahead with your closing argument.
My closing argument is, when you ask me what is the pinnacle of 1980s comedy that is reflective of the culture at the time, that is reflective of what really showed sort of the assumptions of the world, I look at Coming to America, and I think this film was spot on. Problem is, though, most of the writers and directors and whatever who are associated with are either now sadly no longer with us, or they are retired from the industry. I only feel like those kind of sensibilities could be brought to a new generation if we were going to try to do a quote unquote rehash, where we do what Creed did with Rocky and what Force Awakens did with New Hope, of reintroducing a franchise by rebooting this essentially the same story, but with a brand new generation of characters. And I don't see much value to that. Even if you got a Jordan Peele, Jared
Carmichael.
Sorry, thank you. I was blanking on this first name. Jared Carmichael. I just don't see how it could necessarily have the same connection to audiences as the first one did today. But whereas my idea is a little more simplistic, and it is a sequel in the sense of it follows the idea of just following a filmmaker who is with a band, and the kind of great and let me just give you a quick example. Like, let's say we're with F. Gary Gray as he is watching Eazy-E discover that he has AIDS, and the rest of the gang actually kind of gives him crap about it. It could be that kind of funny people-esque dark comedy that could actually resonate, because people are very nostalgic for a lot of the older hip-hop. And if we show sort of the dark side of it with a comedic edge, kind of like how Spinal Tap did that in the first place, I think you'd have a very poignant and very realizing film of maybe we should just lower the nostalgia goggles just a tad.
All right, strong closing from Dohmen. Zach, take it away whenever you're ready.
So Spinal Tap was something great at the time, but I don't think it has the mainstream audience that it might have 20, or we're talking about 993, sorry. So I don't think the mainstream audience was always there for other things. And I think it's a format that has worked really well in television, whether through documentary now with Bill Hader and Fred Armisen doing their Eagles ripoff as the Blue Jeans Committee or something like that. And it's great. And something that works more in that kind of scene, I think, as parody does in general anymore. Parody had its time, and once the 90s really started to happen, it kind of went away. And then Coming to America has an accessible, broad comedy that has never aged, has never. It's time for something really great, and you can use some of the characters that we're familiar with, and some of the storylines, and you say that it would need to be a rehash, and I don't want to call it a rehash, but it is similar to Creed, where it is the passing of a torch to this younger generation, with Jared Carmichael, and having the older generation, older characters we love and are familiar with, to be there as support, and then we can build our attachment to new people. And so that, once again, it's making this whole franchise relevant, which Creed was magically able to do. So that's just the precedent that this is able to work, just maybe in a different genre. When there's no precedent able to work for doing a parody about a real band with kind of a tragic history and a great serious purpose. I think NWA is just the bad subject for that, because having a joke about a real life person who died from AIDS just seems really uncomfortable for me, especially if we're doing it right around the time. You said 1993, so pretty soon, once this is all happening, and it's just too fresh in that comedy. I just don't think that genre is the source for that kind of dry, goofball humor, absurd humor, and I don't think that band and director are the right source for that. Because when they did, like, Ice Cube did go and do comedies, but they were more broad and more of their type, and not this kind of dry comedy that just doesn't fit that culture. I just think Coming to America is something that just seems more feasible to build up an audience, and more feasible to really work and have something still new done to it, and something that's still familiar to kind of make our nostalgia tingle, but then carry forward in a great way. And it is somewhat of a comeback vehicle, which I also think if they can make it work to bring these stars that we love back into our lives, has just as much value as any kind of good movie. If we can have Eddie Murphy being great again, and James Earl Jones being relevant again, which he deserves because he's the best.
He's always been relevant.
All right. Yeah, I guess so. So that was a good round by both of you. Unfortunately, I think I have a pretty clear winner here. I think Dohmen got this one pretty easy. For what it was worth, I think he used the question to his advantage, and pitching a sequel a little bit further back, I think kind of threw Zack off his guard. I think he didn't really know how to defend that at first. Zack, I did like the fact that you were talking about the more political way, but I think you kind of bailed on it a little bit too quick. I think you could have used that a little bit more to your advantage, but Dohmen, I think, really destroyed you on the fact that Murphy's made some pretty terrible sequels. None of them have really come. I like how you did try to bring up Peele and the different creative control factor, but to me, it just wasn't enough. I think Dohmen got that one pretty straightforward with that one. So that's going to tie this match up at 1 apiece. But good round by both of you.
Thank you.
So let's move on now to round 3. We're going back into the realm of Disney. Obviously, when people think of Disney, people think of all the animated movies that they've done over the years. However, Disney's made their fair share of great live-action movies as well. They're continuing to make more every single year, with more remakes and more sequels and everything you can think of under the sun. So we want to ask you guys, what is the best live-action Disney movie that has been theatrically released? So it's basically any movie released under the Disney banner would qualify for this question. Zack, we're going to go to you. Take it away whenever you're ready.
So my choice, which is something I was worried that I was being a little too nostalgic for, and that my passion for it comes from nostalgia. But then we have a Unity Day with my 7th grade class. We were really having some tension between the kids, and we wanted to play a movie and have some activities together to really help us come together. And I was like, I have the perfect movie. And it was Remember the Titans. And the effect that was able to have on a whole different generation of kids, as well as just be completely entertaining and inspiring to me as well, that fact that it still does hold up, but also speaks to not just kids that grew up in the late 90s or 2000 when it came out. But kids today, which are vastly different, even though it's only about 15 years different, but still give them that idea of why it's important to unite with other people of different backgrounds and to look out for people and kind of form a brotherhood. It was really resonant with them while putting it into what is really a great football movie. You have some of the greatest coach speeches ever given by the greatest coach of all time, with Denzel Washington as Coach Boone, going full bravura to really handle that movie and really keep you engaged and inspired throughout it. But also some pretty entertaining football scenes, which Disney has done in other sports movies, but I don't think ever as impactful and as moving as they did in here. You really feel like you're on the field getting shouted out by the coach that you love, but you understand the reason why he's trying to move these characters, watching these characters kind of push against each other, but then really form this team and work together to accomplish the odds that no one thought they did. And connecting it to a true story seems like an easy way to build that emotional connection, but I think it really does help with Remember the Titans that it's based on true story, but also set in this real life time that we still, even my kids' generations kind of have an understanding of what it was, but not really feeling what it was like. So to remember that times really haven't changed that much and to make that connection themselves was really important for them. And I just feel like of Disney live action movies, this is something that's just going to continue to age well, especially with the movie star at hand, that people will go back just to watch Denzel be Denzel and do his thing. But also something that football fans can go back, that's something kids can go back and watch, that families can watch together to either just have a great movie night or to educate their children about past generations and past cultures. So Remember Titans just has so many different purposes and positive effects. But it all just comes together as a damn entertaining movie. And I just don't think many other Disney movies have had so many different facets to it that is effectively kind of brought out as Remember the Titans has.
All right. Very worthy pick from Zach with Remember the Titans. Chris, take it away. What is the best live-action Disney movie?
The best live-action Disney movie to me is the movie that best represents what Disney is about. Disney is about family. Disney is about making yourself better than you could possibly hope to be. Disney is about showing that with the right push, you can achieve something that you never thought you could achieve, even if it means losing your job, so you can be available to spend more time with your family. And I'm, of course, talking about Mary Poppins, the 1964 and the musical classic, which, yes, has some animation. And I did ask for clarification if it was allowed as an answer, and it was.
No concern for me.
So this movie has stood the test of time for 54 freaking years. People still talk about it. People still ogle over the songs. They still ogle over Julie Andrews' wonderful performance. They still laugh and smile at, yes, the ridiculous accent that Dick Van Dyke gives in his character of Bert, but they also, their hearts melt at how endearing his character is. And of course, honestly, this is the best shot Disney movie of all time. Considering the fact that the shots in this film set to it just as much tell the story as the dialogue and the actual progression, this movie is just about perfect. If you have nitpicks, I understand. But good God, this movie is amazing.
All right. It's Mary Poppins. It's Remember the Titans. It's definitely two of the best live-action movies that Disney has done. This is going to be a very interesting fight. Take it away. Whenever you're ready, the 5 minutes will start whenever someone starts talking.
So I don't have nitpicks. I have like serious problems with Mary Poppins. Talking about, I was worried that mine was stuck in nostalgia, and finding out that it wasn't. Mary Poppins completely is. As an adult, it is a bore. It is really slow. It's really long, and I don't even know how kids are entertained by it anymore. I feel like I was just captured in when the animated penguins came up, and watching those now, they don't hold up. Now that you're able to see live action meld with animation so much better, like Jungle Book or the new Jungle Book or anything else, this just seems kind of stuck in its time. And the characters born, and you when you at the beginning gave your long kind of, it's what Disney's all about. It's about a man learning to be better in something else. And you said, of course, it's Mary Poppins. I was like, of course. Like, I never would have guessed, because that movie is barely about that. You only get more context because of saving Mr. Banks later. The dad's in the beginning and the end.
No. You get. See, okay, that's because
that is not the purpose of the
it's not flashed in your face like the obvious racism in Remember the Titans. It has to spoon feed you, because it assumes that you are dumb. You don't understand the concept of racism. No, Mary Poppins is brilliant because it doesn't just shove in your face of, oh, Mr. Banks is a bad parent. No, it takes its time, and
I think it does shove in your face. It just forgets it. At the beginning, you're like, dad's horrible. And then they go and do other things that have nothing to do with it. They go float in a house or go dance with penguins. And at the end, they go, oh, yeah, but remember that this dad now learned it could be good, even though the movie. You just understand. I feel like you get the resonance after watching Saving Mr. Banks, understand where she kind of based that idea on. But as a story-wise, it's horrible. It's just a forced upon thing. It's not. It is not. No. It is spoon-fed. There's no subtlety to it, but it's also just not part of the movie. When Remember the Titans,
yeah, because there's subtlety in Remember the Titans, which is
you don't need subtlety.
It opens up with a fucking lynching.
You don't need
with the goddamn lynching,
because that's important to know. It's part of our culture, and they make it work, and it makes my kids kind of understand what these people are going through, but still giving them the entertaining accessibility to not make them completely melt. But it still understands the seriousness of it. Mary Poppins is a goofball.
And again, you want subtlety. Oh, where does Coach Boone take them? Gettysburg. Oh yeah, because that's
I don't think it is a subtle movie. I don't think it needs to be. It makes its point. The kids don't always react to subtlety. The kids react to what's in front of them, but they make it work, and they make it important and relevant to my students and to youth today. And I think youth 20 years from now, it will still have an important place to play in our history and our cultural growth, and something we can continue to learn from. And we don't need to hide this from kids. And it is important for them to see it. And the fact that kids would want to see it and be engaged in that is hard to do. Okay, you can force feed kids serious history and stuff, and it's not going to work, but put it into an entertaining football movie with characters you love. This is what these people were going through. Here's an emotional experience you can have. It's like reading a book with the kids, reading a serious novel to get them to understand the lessons while getting them an entertaining thing as well. But Mary Poppins is just for little kids to sing songs. And
no, it's not. No, it is not. No, it's not. Okay. Yeah, no. And by the way, Remember the Titans has one of the most predictable scripts of all time. Every single beat you see in that script is a beat from another sports film. Exactly. Well, yeah.
Yeah, Mary Poppins is the same as Chay Chay Boom Bang and Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Okay,
they have their genre too. They have their live action as well.
Like
not any movie that follows the things of a genre is bad. People like genre for a reason. This follows the points because it works. And especially once again, to be resonant for kids, that's why it needs to follow the points to make they don't want to be completely lost. It follows them so they can be engaged and go for it too. But it's still entertaining as an adult too, because you get caught up in the performance, you get caught up in the characters' relationships to each other.
And there's performance because Denzel is the only believable actor in that film. Will Patton is giving a paycheck. Hayden Panettiere is not old enough to understand how to act yet.
Will Patton's really good. The guy who plays the linebacker, I don't know his name, that plays Julius, is amazing, and I don't know why he didn't have a career. You can feel his anger, and you can feel that.
Gary Bertier has a couple of moments, but that's only after he decides to stop being a racist. Because Ryan Gosling is bland as shit in that movie. The guy who plays Sunshine is one note.
He's like the Yoki Nice guy, and the guy from Boy Meets World that plays the big lineman. He's amazingly funny and brings some of this lightness to it that needs it. And really can help forge that connection. When Mary Poppins
don't get me started on Donald Faison, who is not funny in that movie.
Performance. Mary Poppins has one good performance, one goofy performance that is likable in a campy way with Dick Van Dyke, and everyone else is completely forgettable and are dull and boring. So they base it on 2 characters and some cartoons that also don't have any personalities. Penguins just dance. I wish they had more to do and were more entertaining. They're just and watching one dancing scenes.
That makes perfect sense because the Penguins are part of a fantasy sequence. That's the whole point of them going to the end into the chalkboard in the first place. It's part of a fantasy sequence.
But they're not that enjoyable. They don't do anything fun.
And plus, David Tomlinson gives an Oscar-worthy performance in the film. Oh, God damn it.
Is that the dad? Because he doesn't. He just, my kids.
Hey, we're out of time, jackass. We're out of time.
Come on. Don't make me throw a penalty flag on you now.
Do it.
All right, so the 5 minutes has passed. I really like the passion that both of you guys have brought right now. I want to say it's really, really close. So make these closing arguments count. Zach, whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Remember the Titans is a more relevant movie than Mary Poppins is ever going to be. It's going to resonate with more generations forward. Mary Poppins is good when you're little, but if you're watching it as an adult, it just doesn't have the same entertainment factor. Remember Titans is good for any ages all the time. It's also has talk about Oscar-worthy performance. It's the best performance in live action with Denzel Washington, really kind of starting to come into his own. And I feel like if he was Denzel Washington now with Acclaim, it would have been nominated because he has an easier bid than he did then. It is just more kinesthetic. There's more energy to it, more electric. Mary Poppins sits in some places. It gets really dull in between when you are constantly either grasped emotionally in the story or grasped in the energy of these football that is happening. You get really into the game just like you're watching a game on TV, but except you know these people, you know these characters, so you care more. You're like their family rooting for these guys to succeed. And Mary Poppins, you don't really root for anyone. You're just like along for a fancy ride. Then they say you're rooting for this family to get together, but I never even got to know the family or understand their connections other than like a 10-minute thing at the beginning and the 5-minute thing at the end. It was all a point for just different set pieces in the middle rather than a story that really came cohesively together, like Remember the Titans, which works really well and kind of really tight in a way. And it's just a more important movie. And if you say as an adult that, you know, there's better movies about racism and about diversity and unity, but there's no better movies that can connect adults and families and teachers with students and with ages. There's not movies that work that well for all ages to really help transcend this topic and relate to kids, which is something that Disney, I feel like, knows it is important. They do really well in certain movies, but never have done it better. And Remember the Titans, to have this lesson, to have this engaging story, and to have a movie that will be remembered years to come, forever. Mary Poppins will be an ancient piece. Because there'll be a new one. They don't even need to make a new Remember Titans. They're making a new Mary Poppins to make it relevant for kids. Remember Titans is never going to be made.
All right, Chris.
It's not. Remember the Titans is not going to be remade because it's forgotten. It is a forgotten gem of a time now past. It is a clunky script with some good performances, but some foreseeable performances. Its score is underwhelming. The direction is mediocre. The football sequences are pretty good, but the shots are inconsistent. They don't know where to follow half the time. Mary Poppins has stood the test of time because of its groundbreaking cinematography, because of its timeless score that the Sherman Brothers provided, and the songs that they wrote are still being sung by children and adults of all ages everywhere. People are still singing Feed the Birds. People are still singing Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. People are still singing Let's Go Fly a Kite. This movie has such a legacy at Disney that they had to actually make a movie about the making of the movie. This movie is so important to the company that Walt himself fought so damn hard to make it. And when they finally did, multiple Oscar nominations, multiple Oscar wins. Remember the Titans doesn't have any of the acclaim. It doesn't have any of the legacy. It doesn't have any of the gravitas that Mary Poppins has. And I will give you one scene to prove my final point. There's a scene of Mr. Banks walking to the bank to be fired from his job. The lighting and the atmosphere gives this somber tone, like something you'd see out of The Exorcist. And on the way there, he sees where the pigeon lady would normally sit. And he notices that she's no longer there, and neither are the birds. And all you hear is this beautiful choir as you come to a shot, a close-up on his face, and you see that he's actually crying because he is realizing that her presence was connected to his job the whole time. And that's just one of the many beauties of this film.
With one of the most boring songs ever.
Oh my God. Who hurt you? Who fucking hurt you?
I liked it as a kid.
All right, so after the threaten of violence, after all that, that concludes round 3. This was a really good round. I really liked the passion that both of you brought. Both of you brought up a lot of great points.
We both brought it, dude. Whoever wins this one, well fought.
Yes, this one was really difficult to pick from. Obviously, you both brought up how relevant they are from their respective times. You both said they stood the test of time, and then you both said that test of time. But Zach, you just basically said Mary Poppins doesn't hold up, but you didn't really give a reason as to why. Whereas Dohmen did talk about some other things about the racism and the bad messages, predictable writing, mediocre direction, and I think Dohmen's closing about how relevant the movie ended up being for the company of Disney as a whole, and how all the rewards that it ended up getting from the company, and how it's basically made Disney what it is. I am going to give the narrow margin to Chris on this, but it was very, very close. That was a really good fight from both of you. Very, very impressive. We now go to round 4, and enjoyable and Roland Emmerich. These are two words that I'm not used to seeing in the same sentence. I personally think Roland Emmerich is about as enjoyable as sandpapered ass, but that's just my opinion. So we want to ask the question to both of you: what is the most enjoyable movie directed by Roland Emmerich? I do find it funny. Aaron put in parentheses after this question, quote, "Enjoyable can be pitched in any way." I don't know if that's saying anything or not, but let's just see where this goes. Chris, the floor is yours. What is the most enjoyable Roland Emmerich film?
Oh boy, see, that is a tough question because there's only one film of his I can actually call good, and that actually is the one that I picked, and that is the film The Patriot from 2000, starring Mel Gibson, Jason Isaacs, Heath Ledger, and just the most incredible ensemble cast of characters. This movie is enjoyable because it's so surprising. You don't think Emmerich has it in him to actually show you a film that has emotion, that has depth, that has something of an understanding to what it is trying to show you. And the score by John Williams is impeccable. It's actually one of his most underrated scores of all time. But, of course, though, people do say that while the film does take liberties with historical accuracy, and let's be fair here, it's Roland Emmerich. Does he ever do anything completely honest? No. So I went with a film that surprises me every single time I watch it on just how much I actually think it's really good. And it has a lot of tense moments. It has a lot of great characters. And the story is actually really fun. Though we have seen it before, it's very fun.
All right. The Patriot from Chris Dohmen. I actually appreciate he actually sounded authentic, and maybe he actually was for what it was. So, Zach, take it away. What is the most enjoyable Roland Emmerich film?
So I really want to focus on the word enjoyable. One of the most enjoyable, with that definition, to create the whole genre of enjoyable movies, is Independence Day. Probably his only good movie. Independence Day is violent and action like The Patriot, but The Patriot's set in real history, and that just inherently in a real war with real people dying adds more of a sadness to it that it's hard for me to find enjoying. If I want to go and have a fun time, I want to watch people kill aliens, not kill humans who in a way have existed. I want to watch movie stars talk about star-studded cast, movie star performance by Will Smith, and one of the best performances alongside Jurassic Park by told you I blink on every name when I try to do this freaking game. Thank you, Jeff Goldblum. By a great performance by Jeff Goldblum, and Bill Pullman being given a just kind of great, cheesy, inspirational speech that you can kind of dig into. It is movie stars doing, giving fun speeches, great action dialogue like Will Smith punching aliens and saying, "Welcome to this Earth," or I don't get the full line right.
Welcome to Earth.
Welcome to Earth. Yeah. See, you're acting out. It's part of our dialogue because it's so enjoyable, so fun, and something that people want to continue to go back to and watch every year, watch on TV, something people can watch in any mood because it'll just make you feel good and have fun. And The Patriot is inherently, as a war movie and stuck in history, going to be a little sadder. There's kids dying. There's just blood and gore and also you said in history, you're just remembering the true history of people and the sadness, and think, even though it's not in the movie, thinking of everything they forgot, kind of ignoring whole races of people and the Native Americans, and treating kind of in a xenophobic approach anyone on the other side is so just one side villainy, when Independence Day can get away with that because it's aliens, and it's aliens and great masterfully crafted production design with the alien ships and the fighter jets, and you get the great cinematography of capturing everyone involved in this fight while you hear the president give the speech and all the different kinds of people that were brought together. Really a little more of a global unity idea rather than the patriotic rawness of the rest of the world is out to get us that the Patriot has, that just right away makes me uncomfortable. I'd rather us all go together and just kick the shit out of aliens.
All right, can we just go straight into this now?
Yes, I'm good.
Thank you. Okay, so here's my problem with Independence Day. Exactly it.
Yeah.
The fact that they give no shits about the villains, and the fact that we don't actually really see them. All we do
because they're aliens. You care about the heroes. We care about the heroes because they're fun, and that's who we want to follow along kicking shit. You don't care about the villains and patriots. They're all one-sided, terrible people. And they're real people. They're making plastic figurines. At least these are aliens that can be figurines. These are real people that they're saying, oh, they're just out to kill Americans because they're evil Brits and whiny French people.
No.
Yes.
The Patriot is one of the most balanced war films you actually ever will see. Take a look at any time.
I don't think you call any Mel Gibson movie balanced.
Yes, you actually can, believe it or not, because anytime that Mel Gibson is sitting with Lord Cornwallis in the office, they are actually like having a civil conversation. They're acting like real people. They're acting like real generals would before a battle would, and they actually are showing respect to each other. You don't really see that many caricatures in The Patriot, whereas everybody in the Independence Day is a fucking caricature. Judd Hirsch, he is every single Jewish stereotype rolled into one.
Caricatures are fun as shit.
Harvey Fierstein is doing exactly a Harvey Fierstein stereotype. David, oh crap, oh god. Jeff Goldblum is doing just a caricature of Ian Malcolm, but no charm, no charisma.
And people love it. People love Jeff Goldblum doing the Jeff Goldblum thing. No, it's great. People want to see him being Ian Malcolm all the time, and that's what makes it a great movie. We're not arguing the best movie.
Doing Ian Malcolm impersonation. He's not being Ian Malcolm. It's the same problem as what I have with Lost World Jurassic Park, is that every performance after the first Jurassic Park Jeff Goldblum does, it's Ian Malcolm impersonation, but not being Ian Malcolm. Hence the problem. Now, my other thing with Will Smith, yes.
He's great. He's great. Will Smith.
He's great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Problem is, he only has one character. I'm a great fighter pilot.
This is what created that character. This is what formed it. He just started to play it over and over again later.
So then where is this great character that this fucking movie created, aka the sequel, Independence Day Resurgence? That's one big problem against you, because I'm sorry, everything
Independence Day Resurgence has nothing to do with Independence Day. A bad sequel has nothing to do with it.
It taints the original.
No, you're the whiny fanboy response. That's nothing to do with the original. The original is still there. You can act like it's never existed and go with it. Patriot is
I
there.
love when people say that. I love when people say that. That is so. That no. And you're calling me the whiny fanboy. You're the one actively defending this pile of shit.
Yes, because you enjoy it. I'm not fanboys get caught too much up that they need to keep the sanctity of Independence Day because it's such an important film, and it doesn't. Just enjoy it for what it is. Don't care if something else ruined it because it's a fun film. The fucking Patriot is a drama. It is sad. It is not fun. Okay, it's also not very great. If I'm going to put in a war movie, I'm going to put in so many other war movies that reach the dramatic elements that they do, like Apocalypse Now or Saving Private Ryan. But Saving Private Ryan is much more fun in its action.
No, it is not. Okay, no.
It's a fun war to be. War is never fun. That's why watching people die brutally, real people, and knowing that this happened is not
You still
fun.
get a fun action. Okay, take for example when Mel Gibson is going after the people who have just taken Heath Ledger. That action sequence is both riveting and it is actually fun because you know what? You want to see him. You want to see him fucking rip these people to shreds. And plus,
I don't want to see people.
Plus, your movie has one huge strike against you, and that is Harry Connick Jr. He is poison to a film.
It's fine. He's doing his thing. He's part of a blockbuster. They know the movie they're in, rather than trying to think it's this big, dramatic, important piece like The Patriot. It's just not. Roland Emmerich trying to think that he's anything more than a blockbuster director. At least Independence Day, he knows his ground. He owns his ground and gives us this great blockbuster piece that kind of kept blockbusters resonant. It brought it into a different generation, moving it away from the action of Arnie and Sly and bringing in something grander, more visually intense, and just more of a spectacle. It brought it into space.
Yes, that's right. That's right. The old Independence Day revived the want for Star Wars films argument. Yes.
Not Star Wars, it's different. It changed it. It connected Star Wars to Die Hard. It connected action stars like Will Smith, connected him to Bruce Willis and to Arnie, and bringing him into something that was new ideas, that was grander, and had really some more cinematic qualities to it with the production design and the camera works. That Roland Emmerich doesn't do as good pictures. It's just bland Revolutionary War stuff that's been done better. It's not even the best. The war action is not as great as things we have seen since and before. With Independence Day, you can say it's one of the best. You shoot 'em up spaceship Air Force movies that you might have seen.
It's also one of the dumbest of all time because how do they stop the aliens? Oh,
it's okay for it to be dumb. People like dumb movies sometimes. It's still a competent script that makes you get involved with the characters. It's a competently made movie, so it's not dumb.
It's not competent.
To make a movie that works like this is not stupid.
All right, time's up.
Movies too much. Time's up.
Time's up. Time's up. Yeah. Jesus.
Okay.
I like the fact that you guys were so anxious and glad that you didn't even let me say that the debate period began. So I appreciate that, guys.
If I lose my voice, I'm not going to work tomorrow. I'm calling the principal now.
Sorry, Zach.
Okay, so again, you guys have made some really great arguments right now. I think it's really, really close. Dohmen, take it away with your closing argument whenever you're ready.
Okay, my definition of the term enjoyable is something that can still have some flaws, but is overall still a functional product. The Patriot is a functional product because it has a competent script. Is the movie overly long? Yeah, you want to make that argument? I will 100% give you that. But it makes up for it with a competent script, great performances by actors you wouldn't expect, like Donald Logue and Jason Isaacs, to step up when you least expect them to. It also shows just how brutal some tacticians back in the Revolution actually were, and we did not see that in wars about the American Revolution. It was always about how great our guys were, not about how great their guys were. It was a very balanced film. That to me is what makes it so enjoyable. Independence Day is a fun, dumb blockbuster comedy, but it's all style, no substance, just filler and Vivica A. Fox's ass shaking in my face which is great eye candy. It's great to look at. But the problem is that's all it is. Nothing else.
All right. Zach, take it away.
Yeah, Independence Day is the best eye candy. I do really want to focus on the semantics here because enjoyable, I think in a way you cannot say Independence Day is not enjoyable when I think it's easy for me to argue that Patriot as a bloody war movie with a lot of sadness, his lost his child, it is just working in a different sphere, in that working in a different zone, in a zone that it also is very minor and it's not that great. It's not good. It's compared to other war movies, it really flounders. So it's not able to be this grand fun movie, and it's not able to be the serious war piece. So that's why it has gotten forgotten in time, when Independence Day is something, once again, has resonated in an entertaining way with generations. It's what parents are showing their kids. It's really, in a way, influenced blockbuster making later, not let alone Noah Emmerich's career. He's just started making movies, continuing like Independence Day with his disaster movies, and kind of took that zone, but has had other disaster movies kind of follow in line. And you do have some great production design with the spaceships. Those are ships that we're going to remember what they look like in time. I remember nothing about what the Patriot looks like other than just general images of the Revolutionary War that I have anyways. And the Independence Day doesn't have the tricky ground of dealing with real history, and then the Patriot just floundered that. It ignores a lot of important pieces. It tells the story really biased to what it wants to say, and becomes super rah-rah, uncomfortably rah-rah and patriotic in a negative sense of a way that, especially in our times now, just has add some more poison to it. When Independence Day is equally rah-rah, but it's rah-rah against evil aliens from above, so it's easier to cheer for, and you do cheer for him because you're on Will Smith's side. You're like, yeah, I'm following that badass in the plane, and I'm not going to follow, sad Mel Gibson, who already makes me uncomfortable just as an actor. So that takes away the enjoyment factor. But also Heath Ledger, before he really developed the actor he's become, he's still just really slight in that, and you haven't even mentioned him much because he's just not good in it. He's just kind of falls flat. He doesn't give the fun star performance he was able to give either in Even Knight's Tale, which is a much more enjoyable war movie than it's not war, but enjoyable movie in that kind of realm than Patriot. But Independence Day is the definition of what fun is. You get spaceships, you get aliens, you get things blowing up, you get Will Smith giving great dialogue that you already act out because you remember it because it's great. I don't remember any lines from the Patriot. Okay, there's nothing that stands, and nothing that captures our imagination and captures our heart like Independence Day is able to do. And it delivered Will Smith as, here you go, here's your next action star, your movie to start to follow, with Men in Black and everything else, Wild West, everything else to follow later. And the sequel has nothing to do with that, so it's an argument not even to make. It doesn't taint it. That's a bullshit response. Okay, at least it had a sequel because people wanted to see it.
Okay, I didn't pick the song in my closing. Just saying. Otherwise, I could have gone on. I could have gone longer. Just saying.
I understand. I was waiting for Jeremy to shout time. I thought it was being timed.
Oh no, but okay. At the same time, closing argument, because he doesn't have much of a chance to rebuttal. I'll take some things that you brought up in your closing, that you said in your actual debate period. So that being said, it was a good round. I think both of you got some real good shots on each other. I think I do have a winner in this round, though. I think the problem that I had with when it came to Dohmen, I think the problem is, I think the one bullet point that you can easily make against Independence Day is that it's a blatant, Stargate ripoff, which Emmerich did, the year before. I think that's always the killer, case that you can always make against Independence Day, which I've always found Stargate to be way better than Independence Day personally. But unfortunately, you didn't bring it up. And some of the things that you were kind of giving into kind of proved Zach's point about the fact that it makes it a more enjoyable movie with, the great dialogue. The fact that you were actually saying lines of the dialogue.
Because he forgot it.
Thank you.
Well,
you acted it with such joy.
I was being nice. But yes, given the point.
Yep. Sometimes it's just better to be mean, Chris. With that being said, that's going to bring us tied at 2 apiece. A good match so far, guys. This has been really fun to judge. So we're going to get at least 2 speed round questions. Remember, it's first to 4. So speed round question. Basically, it's a straightforward question. Give whatever you think the best answer is. You'll start with a 30-second debate period, and then your opponent will have the same amount of time, and then you will have 15-second rebuttals. If we go to the final question, we will have 3 different stints of debate periods. The first lasting 30 seconds, the second lasting 20 seconds, and the third lasting 10 seconds. If you have any questions, we will begin. So, obviously, the Oscars were on Sunday. So, the first speed round question that we want to ask, simple, straightforward question, is, of the 2 individuals that won Oscars for Best Actor and Best Actress, respectively, who has had the better film resume, Gary Oldman or Frances McDormand?
Gary Oldman. Okay.
I think there's Chris first with McDormand.
You said different things. So it's okay.
I said Oldman.
Yeah,
I said Oldman? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we were on opposite sides anyway, so it works.
All right, so it's Oldman for Dohmen, McDormand for Zach. Dohmen, take it away whenever you're ready.
Gary Oldman is a virtual chameleon. He has been in so many different types of roles that he is one of the most versatile actors of all time. You look at Zurich from The Fifth Element. You look at him in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. You look at him as Winston Churchill in Darkest Hour. Look at him as Sid Vicious. He is a completely different character in every single one of those films, and he is always able to do different types of roles. Even something like Sirius Black, where he's a franchise character. He shows that he has the variety and the versatility, whereas Frances McDormand is a little bit more one note in some of the characters that she portrays. She has a little more variety in some of her voice talent, but out on her physical talent level, especially nowadays, she is more or less playing the same caricature.
Fine.
So, Frances McDormand we talked about the better kind of career as far as the movies that are made, and the movies that are on Frances McDormand's IMDb page or her resume are a lot stronger. A lot of that has to do with the Coen Brothers movie that she fits so well in, with Fargo, with Blood Simple, Man Who Wasn't There, with Burn After Reading, with her small, goofy part in Hail Caesar that proves that she can do something a little different, a little more eccentric, a little goofier, because she does have more grounds than just her seriousness. While Gary Oldman sometimes can take it too much, Frances McDormand never does. She's always the best part of everything she does and can really deliver the strong woman that was important to our time that she delivered in 3 Billboards and Fargo, for sure.
15 seconds, whenever you're ready, Chris.
Frances McDormand is way too busy trying to be with the same directors. She hasn't reached out to enough variety as Gary Oldman has. Gary Oldman has had a career that's literally lasted since the 70s into today. Whereas Frances is a little just too clustered into one period, for especially during the 90s, where all she did was Coen Brothers films. Gary Oldman has much more variety than her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you ready, Zach?
Okay, so she did not do just Coen Brothers movies. She did Lone Star, she did Wonder Boy, she did Almost Famous, Great Mom, and Almost Famous, carrying on her long character, while Gary Oldman was in a bunch of just bad movies doing way too much, whether it be in The Book of Eli or I'm forgetting other goofy roles he had, and Zorg is debatable. He's still over the top, but Frances McDormand's always right there giving a strong performance.
Good argument by both of you. The fact you both brought up both kind of their resumes, you're both trying to take shots at the other one. McDormand with the fact that she only did Coen Brothers for a good while. Oldman with the fact, he kind of did some clunkers in there. But I think, Zach, I don't think you really defended the Coen Brothers argument very good, because you could have made the case that, all those Coen Brother movies were great. So to me, I think I got to give the point to Chris on that with Gary Oldman. Really close round. So that makes it game point for Mr. Skywalker. If he can win this next round, he will win the match. So, speed round question number 2 is, which animated sequel has a better chance to be as good as its predecessor, Incredibles 2 or Wreck-It Ralph 2?
Incredibles 2.
Wreck-It Ralph. Oh, yeah. I'm glad we keep being on the opposite side. So
I agree. Actually, makes it pretty easy. So, Chris, whenever you're ready, Incredibles 2, what makes it a better chance to be as good as its predecessor?
Incredibles 2 is actually built on a brand new concept where after you have saved the day, where do you actually go from here? Do you try to bring superheroes back into the mainstream, or do you just try to, maybe find yourselves back on the way out again? And for Bob, his character, he now has to be the stay-at-home dad. This is a very interesting idea that we have not even tried to concept from what we saw in the first film. Wreck-It Ralph 2 is essentially built on one joke. What if Ralph winds up in the internet? And while it's going to be funny, it's going to be very amusing, it's just going to be a little too one note to carry an entire film, in my opinion.
Are you ready for that?
I'm based a lot on the high bar that Incredibles has set up. Incredibles was a revolutionary movie at the time, bringing superheroes into time. And Incredibles 2, like many other Pixar sequels, like Finding Dory to like Monsters University, is not going to be able to reach those high goals of that. When Wreck-It Ralph is a good movie, and they found a new thing to develop on that can easily reach that bar, if not get ahead of it, especially being more relevant at times, being the web rather than arcade games, that kids really didn't understand what were anymore. At least it speaks to kids and speaks to our times. There's a lot of great jokes to go with that. With how internet culture is now, when Incredibles is just not going to be able to get that. All right.
15-second rebuttal.
Pixar has made just as many great sequels. Take a look at Toy Story 2 and 3. Take a look at what we're probably going to get from both of these films, let's be honest with ourselves here, and let's face facts. Helen Parr is now single-handedly the most interesting female superhero of all time because of the fact that she went from being a superhero to being a stay-at-home mom, but now being a superhero again in the limelight.
So, am I ready?
Yep.
All right. They're all interesting superheroes, but they're just doing another day in their life. It was all built about the family relationship, and that's just what they're continuing. It's not something new. At least they're putting Wreck-It Ralph in a whole new world, because that's the best part of Wreck-It Ralph is their world development. Incredibles is still in the same world, and it's just going to be able to comedically step on new ground where Incredibles is fighting on the same action comic book stuff it's already had done.
That was a good round. Wasn't exactly expecting how that was going to go, but I liked both points that each of you made. Dohmen kind of saying the internet thing, which is a fair point. However, I think Zach made up a good point of the fact that Incredibles 1 is just so great that the potential of it being as good is kind of hard, and the fact of it's just where do you go from here? How can you make that as good as its predecessor? I was really close, but I think Zach is going to take that point, which is going to tie this up at 3 apiece.
I made the great sequels point. Damn it.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty used to this situation. The first one I did, I went to the final question, and this one will do the same. I don't know how I keep screwing this up. So yeah, as I said before, this will be 3 debate periods: 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. Whenever you hear the question, give whatever you think is the best answer. The question is, what is the worst movie starring Will Ferrell?
I need to look at his catalog.
All of them?
All of them.
How did I know somebody was going to say that? God dang it.
What's the Kevin Hart prison one? I choose that. What's the name? Get Hard.
Get Hard.
Ooh. Get Hard.
I choose Get
Hard. Okay. There's just too many to choose from because they...
That's what makes this so great.
And I love how you chose that, probably knowing that I cannot stand Will Ferrell.
Yeah, just choose Anchorman, then choose a good one. Challenge yourself.
Blades of Glory.
Oof, that's another bad one. Me personally, I would have went with the Land of the Lost movie, but
I never saw it. That's why
I never saw it.
Well, I don't blame y'all one stinking bit. So, Zachary, or is yours? Great Gonzo. What have you got to say with Get Hard as the worst Will Ferrell movie? This ought to be good. Best of luck to both of you.
what's worked really well for Will Ferrell movies is having a great concept that he can play with. And Get Hard is just such an outdated concept that didn't work. They did other prison comedies like Let's Go to Prison. That works a little better. When Get Hard relies on rape jokes and this uncomfortable, a lot of homophobia jokes going in as well. And it's just not the absurdity and the goofballness and the great one-liners we're used to Will Ferrell. Instead, we get Kevin Hart being the shrillest he's ever been, and Will Ferrell being an accountant, because that's what we want to see Will Ferrell being, he's a businessman, not an accountant, but a big selling businessman that goes to jail and then he's scared because he's the rich white guy for the time. Stupid time. I need to speak even faster.
Blades of Glory is an abomination against humanity because you have Will Ferrell, who is one of the most unfunny people of all time, in a film directed by Josh Gordon, who is the definition of unfunny. And then you have John Heder, who is quite possibly the single worst actor of all time, considering he was in such awful films like The Benchwarmers and, of course, Napoleon Dynamite. You could only have the most obnoxious pairing in comedy since Starsky and Hutch, that this film was destined to fail from day one.
All right, second rebuttal period. This one will last 20 seconds. Zach, take it away whenever you're ready.
So I actually think the relationship between John Heder and Will Ferrell works. They're both being goofballs and works off each other in a sports parody. That is a great idea to put this giant man and conspiracy just as a visual image is good. Going to prison, a white guy being scared to go to prison is such a blind joke of the current times. It's so tone deaf and it just hits offensively and not funny right away.
The fact of the matter is, Get Hard actually had some talented people who were able to have moments where they were funny. For example, John Mayer has a hilarious cameo in Get Hard. Craig T. Nelson is able to have a funny moment. T.I. actually has a funny moment in there. Alison Brie gives her best, which is more than I can say for any of the cast members of Blades of Glory, including Craig T. Nelson and Jenna Fisher from The Office.
All right, final 10 seconds. I'll say for the record, I think I do have a slight favorite right now. So these 10 seconds will be very important. Zach, take it away. 10 seconds whenever you're ready.
So Craig T. Nelson is funny in Blades of Glory, but you said that there's supporting cast of Get Hard, it's funny, but the stars aren't. The stars in Blades of Glory is fun, and it has some good visual gags, like the move where it's really risky that they're going to cut off a head, but you always think Get Hard has nothing inspiration, or what's the word? Inspired.
Get Hard doesn't have anything inspired, but at least it tries. Whereas Blades of Glory just simply tries to be a cheap I, Tonya knockoff and absolutely fails on every possible level, from editing to sound design to literally just existing as a piece of art.
Tom.
We just acknowledge I, Tonya came out 13 years later.
Well, I, Tonya is the better version of Blades of Glory.
Were you about to say something else?
It's honestly the better version of Blades of Glory.
Yeah, but it's not a knockoff because it came out later.
So, yeah, it was a really good round. I love the fact that you all were more than happy to talk shit on Will Ferrell and his wonderful, glorious movies.
Thank you.
I like Will Ferrell.
Fucking hate him.
I like Blades of Glory.
Oh my God, what's wrong with you?
Will Ferrell's great. Said no one ever. I think ultimately I do have a favorite, and ultimately the person that will win this match. I think the killer shot that was made in this player's favor was the fact that the similar cast in his movie was more worse than what the similar cast in his other predecessor's movie was. And that was when Dohmen brought up the fact about Craig T. Nelson, about being funny perhaps in Get Hard, but not being as funny in Blades of Glory. I think the fact that Zach didn't quite make enough of an attempt to defend that and attack that point, I think I'm going to have to give the final point and the victory to Chris Dohmen. 4-3, a victory for Skywalker. He will now advance into round 2. But that was a very, very hard-fought match. Congratulations to both of you. That was a lot of fun to be a part of. So, with that said, Chris, you now advance to round 2, and you now get to play the winner of the match between the Freak, Isaac Horvat, and JTH. Spoiler, it wasn't me. Don't know how that happened. But, yeah, so Isaac had some interesting words to say in his post-match interview when he whipped my ass. Number one, he didn't think you were going to win the match. And 2, he said it didn't matter who he was going to play. Basically said he was going to wipe the floor with whoever he played. Do you have any response to that at all?
Isaac, there's one thing I know that you know how to do is talk. The one thing that I know you don't know how to do is answer. That is all. And Zach, dude, this match could have gone either way, and I couldn't have asked for a better opponent. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a great time. I'm used to losing in 7. It's kind of my thing. In life, I just lose in 7. But yeah, it was a great time. Nice, get some energy out, get some passionate arguments, and hopefully put on a good show.
And I think you definitely did that tonight. Zach, I think obviously, unfortunately, you do fall to 1-3, and I think just kind of exactly like Malcolm Lay, I don't think your 1-3 record definitely does not show your knowledge of movie and your ability to debate movie. But unfortunately, you are 1-3 now. It's going to be kind of interesting to see where you would go from here. Do you have any potential plans of what you may do once the tournament is said and done?
I do what I'm told. Whatever Aaron says, here's your match. I'm in. I'm happy to be part of it. I mean, I maybe take a break for a little bit just because I do get very anxious leading up to it. I just don't know if it's the healthiest thing, but I enjoy being part of it, so I don't feel like going away. But I'll be happy to sit out while the tournament finishes. So,
well said by both players. And so, with that being said, that's going to do it for this edition of Movie Battleground. Very entertaining match. Both guys brought it best they could. Ultimately, there was a winner and there was a loser. And yeah, this was a whole lot of fun to host. And always remember to like, comment, share, subscribe to the Worldwide Movie Games Network. I think Chris Dohmen would appreciate that very much. So, Chris, other than this very channel, where can the good people find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter at my band Last Shot Redemption at LSAR Band MN. You guys can follow the World Movie Games Network on Twitter at WWMGN Take 3. And you can follow me on Instagram at Chris Skywalker Dohmen.
Zach, where can the good people find you?
You can find me on Facebook at Zack Ford. Follow me on Letter. My name is. Just type in Zack Ford and look for my face. You can also just go out into a field, shout my name into the abyss, and I'll show up. I'll be there. Don't worry.
And of course, you can find me on Twitter at WWJTH. You can find me on the Facebook page, Jeremy Hastings, JTH, the same thing. And you can find me making GIFs and ripping brackets and all that fun garbage. So with that being said, that's going to do it for this edition of Movie Battleground. Yay! He did it. It's all worth it now. So with that being said, that's going to do it for this edition of Movie Battleground. Until next time, thank you for watching, and we all bid you adieu.